The air smelled like burning metal. Smoke rose from the ruins of what was once the human settlement of New Hope on the outer planet of Andromeda 9. Buildings lay broken like fallen toys. The streets were empty except for one man who walked calmly through the destruction. Daeho wore simple gray clothes. His head was shaved and his face showed no fear. He was not young, perhaps 50, Earth years old, with deep lines around his eyes that appeared when he smiled. Right now he was not smiling. He was waiting. From the sky came the low hum of void-born ships. They looked like dark tears in the fabric of space, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. The ships hovered above the ruins, scanning for survivors. "They will find me soon," Daeho said to himself. He sat down in the middle of the road, crossed his legs, and closed his eyes. 3 miles away, Commander Tae-wan watched through high-powered binoculars. He lay flat on a hill covered with blue-gray grass that moved like water in the wind. His face was dirty with ash and sweat, and his uniform torn at the shoulder. "What is he doing?" whispered Suk, a young soldier lying beside him. Her hand gripped her weapon so tightly her knuckles were white. "I don't know," said Tae-wan. He adjusted the binoculars. "But Daeho never does anything without a reason." "We should rescue him," Suk said. "The quantum monks are too valuable to lose." Tae-wan shook his head. 20 of us against a void-born search party. We would all die, and for what? Look at him. He wants to be found. Back in the ruined city, Daeho opened his eyes as shadows fell across his face. 3 void-born soldiers surrounded him. They were tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin that looked like the night sky, deep black with tiny points of light that moved like stars. They had no mouths, communicating through thought and technology. Their eyes were large and completely white, adapted to see in the darkness of space where they evolved. "Human detected," said one in a flat mechanical voice that came from a translator device. "Identify yourself." Daeho looked up at them with calm eyes. "I am Daeho of the Order of Quantum Monks. I surrender myself freely." The void-born soldiers looked at each other, their star-flecked skin pulsing with light as they communicated silently. This was unusual. Humans typically fought or ran. They did not surrender, especially not calmly. "Stand," ordered the lead soldier. Daeho rose to his feet with fluid grace despite his age. The void-born placed restraints on his wrists, metal bands that glowed with blue energy. "These are unnecessary," Daeho said. "I will not resist." "Silence, human," said the soldier. "You will be taken for questioning." From his hiding place, Tae-wan watched as they led Daeho to their ship. His mind raced with questions. The quantum monks were the most mysterious of all humans. They studied the deepest secrets of reality, the place where physics became something more. They could do things that seemed impossible, yet they rarely showed their full power. "Commander," said Suk. Why would he give himself up? He could have escaped easily. Tae-wan lowered his binoculars. "The quantum monks see things differently. They understand patterns we cannot see." He paused. "We need to inform Central Command that Daeho has been taken." The void-born ship rose into the sky, becoming smaller until it was just a dark spot against the orange-pink clouds. Tae-wan felt a strange mix of worry and hope. If any human could survive the void-born, it was a quantum monk. Inside the void-born ship, Daeho was placed in a small cell. The walls were smooth black metal that seemed to swallow light. There was no bed, no toilet, nothing but empty space. The void-born did not understand human needs. Daeho sat on the floor and closed his eyes again. To anyone watching, he appeared to be sleeping or meditating, but in his mind, he was active. The quantum monks had learned to see reality as it truly was, patterns of energy and information, probability and potential. While his body sat still, his consciousness explored the ship around him. 3 days passed. Daeho was taken from his cell to a large room with a single chair in the center. They strapped him to it and began the questioning. A void-born officer, named Kral, conducted the interrogation. Unlike the soldiers, Kral had markings on his face, small silver lines that showed his high rank. "Why did you surrender?" asked Kral. "Because it was necessary," replied Deho. "Necessary for what?" Deho smiled slightly. "For what must happen next." Kral circled the chair slowly. "You will tell us the locations of all human resistance bases." "I do not know them," said Deho truthfully. "You will tell us how the human ships evade our sensors." "I do not know that either." Kral stopped in front of him. "Then you are useless to us." "No one is useless," said Deho. "Everyone has a purpose." The questioning continued for hours. Sometimes they used pain to try to make Deho talk. They used devices that sent signals directly to the pain centers of his brain. Any normal person would have screamed or passed out. Deho's breathing changed slightly, but he showed no other reaction. After 5 days of questioning, Kral reported to his superior, the Void-born Emperor Zoth. The Emperor's chamber was vast and dark, designed to resemble the void of space where the Void-born had evolved. Zoth himself was larger than other Void-born, his skin showing not just stars but entire galaxies that moved across his body. "The human reveals nothing," said Kral, bowing his head. "He feels pain but does not respond to it. He answers our questions but tells us nothing of value." Emperor Zoth's voice filled the room, coming from everywhere and nowhere. "This human is different. The ones called monks have abilities we do not understand. They are dangerous." "Shall I continue the questioning, Emperor?" "No," said Zoth. "He will be executed. Make it public. Show it to all humans on the conquered worlds. Let them see that even their special ones die like all the rest." Kral bowed again. "It will be done, Emperor. When shall the execution take place?" "In 7 days. Make preparations. Use the human female for the task." "The scientist?" "But she has never performed an execution." "Exactly," said Zoth. "The psychological impact will be greater when humans see one of their own kill their holy man. It will break their spirit." In his cell, Deho opened his eyes. He had heard the conversation through his quantum awareness, his consciousness having spread throughout the ship during his meditation. He nodded to himself. "And so it begins," he whispered, a small smile forming on his lips, just as it must. Jisoo stared at her reflection in the polished metal wall of her quarters. Her face was thin, with high cheekbones and dark circles under her eyes. Once, her hair had been long and black. Now it was cut short, with streaks of gray despite her being only 40 years old. 15 years as a void-born slave had aged her beyond her years. She touched the small metal device at the base of her skull. It was warm against her fingers. Always warm. The neural implant connected her mind to the void-born control system. It made her obey. It made her forget who she used to be. But lately, strange things had been happening. Yesterday, she had placed her cup on the left side of her desk, but when she turned back, it was on the right side. This morning, she had awakened from dreams filled with numbers and equations that almost made sense. The door to her quarters slid open with a soft hiss. A void-born officer entered. His skin rippled with tiny lights, showing his irritation. "Scientist." "Jisoo," he said in the flat mechanical voice they all used when speaking to humans. "You have been selected for special duty." Jisoo bowed her head. The neural implant made her feel happy about being chosen, though somewhere deep inside, a small voice screamed in protest. "What is the duty?" she asked. "Execution," said the officer. "A human prisoner must be eliminated in 7 days. You will perform this task." Jisoo felt her heart beat faster. In 15 years, she had never been asked to kill another human. Teal. Implant pushed feelings of pride and honor into her mind, but underneath horror grew. "I have never performed an execution," she said. "You will be trained," replied the officer. "The prisoner is one of the monks. Their leader considers this execution important for breaking human resistance." The officer left, and Jisoo sat heavily on her small bed. Monks. The word stirred something in her memory. Before her capture, she had been a quantum physicist. Her research had focused on quantum entanglement, the strange connection between particles that existed even when separated by great distances. The monks had contacted her once, interested in her work. The memory faded as the implant sent a small shock through her brain. Thinking about the past caused pain. Jisoo had learned to avoid it. For the next 3 days, Jisoo trained with the disintegration beam, a void-born weapon that broke apart the bonds between atoms. It left nothing behind. No blood, no body. Only dust that quickly scattered into nothing. The 4th day, she was taken to see the prisoner. The cell was deep within the void-born flagship. 2 guards stood outside, their star-flecked skin pulsing slowly with light as they communicated without words. They stepped aside as Jisoo approached. "You have 10 minutes," one guard said. "Do not touch the prisoner." The door slid open, and Jisoo entered. The cell was small and dark. In the center sat a man with a shaved head and simple gray clothes. He was sitting cross-legged on the floor, his eyes closed. He looked peaceful, as if he were in a garden rather than a cell. "Are you here to prepare me for death?" Daeho asked, without opening his eyes. Jisoo was startled. How did he know someone had entered? The Voidborn made no sound when they moved. "I am here to inform you of the execution procedure," she said. The words came automatically, pushed into her mind by the implant. Daeho opened his eyes and looked at her. His gaze was so intense that Jisoo took a step back. He seemed to be looking, not at her, but into her, seeing past her face to something deeper. "Jisoo," he said softly. "Quantum physicist, specialist in entanglement theory." Jisoo gasped. "How do you know my name? How do you know what I was?" Daeho smiled. "The universe remembers who you are even if you've forgotten." Pain shot through Jisoo's head as the implant reacted to her surprise and confusion. She pressed her hand against the wall to steady herself. "Your equations were beautiful," Daeho continued. "You were close to understanding. So close that the Voidborn feared you might discover what the quantum monks already knew." "Stop talking," Jisoo said. Her vision blurred as the implant increased its control. "I am here only to inform you that in 3 days you will be executed in the Grand Void Chamber. The event will be broadcast to all human worlds under Voidborn control." Despite her words, she found herself wanting to hear more from this strange man. The implant could control her actions, but not her curiosity. Daeho nodded. "And you will be my executioner." They chose well. There is symmetry in it. Symmetry? The word triggered something in Jisoo's mind, an equation she had once written about quantum symmetry. For a moment she could see it clearly, but then the implant sent another shock through her brain, and the image vanished. "In 3 days things will change," said Daeho. "For both of us." Jisoo turned to leave, unable to continue the conversation as the implant took firmer control. But Daeho spoke once more before she reached the door. "Your research was correct. Jisoo, consciousness is the key to quantum manipulation. Remember that." The words echoed in her mind as she left the cell. The guards noticed nothing unusual about her, but inside, Jisoo felt as if tiny cracks had formed in the wall that separated her true self from the slave the Voidborn had created. That night, her dreams were filled with equations again. But this time, there was also a shaved head and kind eyes and words that repeated over and over. "The universe remembers who you are." In the morning, strange things continued to happen. When she tried to put on her uniform, it was already on her body. She had no memory of dressing. When she reached for her water cup, her hand passed through it as if it were not really there. When she tried again, the cup was solid. The implant sent pain whenever these events occurred, trying to make her forget them. But for the first time, in 15 years, Jisoo found herself fighting back against the pain, holding on to the strange moments. On the day before the execution, Jisoo was called to the chamber of Krau, the Voidborn officer in charge of the prisoner. "The human monk has eaten nothing since his capture," Krau said. "Yet he shows no signs of weakness. Explain this." Jisoo had no answer. The implant searched her mind for knowledge of human physiology but found nothing useful. Perhaps he has stored fat reserves, she suggested, knowing it was a poor explanation for 17 days without food. Tomorrow you will kill this human, said Kral. There must be no mistakes. The Emperor himself will attend. The execution must be perfect. Jisoo bowed her head. It will be done as ordered. But as she walked back to her quarters, a thought formed in her mind. A thought that the implant did not catch and erase. What if she could not kill the monk? What if, somehow, her hand refused to activate the disintegration beam? The thought should have terrified her. Disobedience meant pain or death. But instead, she felt something she had not felt in 15 years. Hope. That night, as Jisoo prepared for sleep, she noticed a small piece of paper on her pillow. She did not remember putting it there. On it was written a single equation, one she recognized from her research long ago. Below it were words. Matter is information. Information cannot be destroyed. Tomorrow, remember who you are. Jisoo quickly destroyed the paper, tearing it into tiny pieces and flushing them away. The implant did not react. It was as if it could not see the paper or did not understand its importance. For the first time since her capture, Jisoo fell asleep with a small smile on her face. Tomorrow would change everything. She was sure of it. The day of the execution arrived. The Grand Void Chamber on the Voidborn flagship had been prepared for the event. It was a massive round room with walls that seemed to absorb light. The ceiling was transparent, showing the stars above. The floor was a platform suspended over what looked like an endless drop into darkness. The chamber was designed to remind everyone of the Voidborn's origins in the empty spaces between stars. For humans, it created a feeling of smallness and fear. For the Voidborn, it felt like home. Jisoo stood in her preparation room dressed in the ceremonial armor of a Voidborn executioner. The suit was black with lines of glowing blue light running across it. On her right arm was mounted the disintegration beam, a weapon that could reduce a human to dust in seconds. Her neural implant hummed at the base of her skull, sending waves of pride and purpose through her mind. But underneath these artificial feelings, her true thoughts moved like fish in dark water. The equation she had seen last night kept appearing in her mind, despite the implant's attempts to erase it. Matter is information. Information cannot be destroyed. The words repeated themselves over and over. A Voidborn officer entered the room. "It is time," he said. "The chamber is filled. The Emperor has arrived." Jisoo nodded and put on her helmet. It covered her whole face, showing only her eyes through a narrow slit. She followed the officer through the corridors of the ship toward the Grand Void. Miles away from the Voidborn flagship, Commander Taewon and 5 resistance fighters had infiltrated a smaller Voidborn vessel. They wore stolen Voidborn armor modified to fit human bodies. Their faces were covered with light-absorbing paint to mimic the dark skin of their enemies. "The execution broadcast will begin soon," said Suk, looking at a screen on the ship's control panel. "All Voidborn ships are receiving the signal." Taewon nodded grimly. "We're too late to stop it. But we might still rescue the body if there's anything left. The quantum monks deserve proper rights." "Commander," said another fighter named Han. "I've accessed their communication network. We can hear everything happening in the Grand Void Chamber." "Good," said Taewon. "At least we can bear witness." Suddenly, Taewon's communication device buzzed. He looked down at it in surprise. There was a message, written in human language but transmitted through the Voidborn network. It simply said, "Wait, watch, learn, D." "It's from Daeho," Taewon whispered. "How is this possible? He's in the execution chamber." "What does it mean?" asked Suk. "It means," said Taewon slowly, "that this is not what it appears to be." Inside the Grand Void Chamber, hundreds of Voidborn officials had gathered. They stood in circular rows around the central platform where the execution would take place. Their skin pulsed with excited lights, communicating their anticipation to each other without words. At the highest point of the chamber sat Emperor Zoth on a throne that seemed made of solid darkness. He was larger than the other Voidborn, with galaxies moving across his skin instead of stars. His white eyes watched everything. Around the edges of the room stood human slaves, forced to witness the execution of one of their kind. Their faces were blank, controlled by neural implants similar to Jisu's. But as they waited, something strange was happening to them. One by one, they blinked, as if waking from a deep sleep. The change was subtle, not enough for the Voidborn to notice, but spreading slowly through the group. 2 Voidborn guards brought Daeho into the chamber. He walked between them with steady steps, his back straight and his face calm. He wore the same simple gray clothes as when he was captured. His hands were bound in front of him with energy cuffs that glowed blue against his skin. Emperor Zoth's voice filled the chamber, coming from everywhere at once. Beings of the void, we gather to witness justice. This human, one of their so-called holy men, will demonstrate the futility of resistance. Even their spiritual leaders cannot stand against our power. Daeho was led to the center of the platform. Jisu stepped forward from the other side, her armor making soft humming sounds as she moved. She raised her right arm, and the disintegration beam began to charge, glowing with increasing brightness. The execution will now begin, announced a Voidborn official. All human worlds under our control are receiving this broadcast. Let them see the price of defiance. Jisu stood 3 paces from Daeho. Through her helmet, she looked at his face. He showed no fear, only a strange kind of expectation, as if he had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Then Daeho did something unexpected. He bowed to Jisu. It was a deep and respectful bow, the kind one might give to an honored teacher or a revered elder. The Voidborn murmured among themselves, confused by this show of respect for the one about to kill him. Inside Jisu's helmet, warning lights flashed. Her neural implant detected confusion and hesitation, emotions it was programmed to suppress. Pain shot through her head, making her wince. But the pain seemed distant now, as if it were happening to someone else. What are you waiting for? The voice of Emperor Zoth boomed through the chamber. Execute the human now. Jisu's finger rested on the trigger of the disintegration beam. The weapon was fully charged, humming with deadly energy. One small movement would end Daeho's life. But as she looked at him through her helmet's visor, she saw him smile. It was a gentle smile, full of understanding and something else, recognition. He saw her, the real her, beneath the armor and the neural control. Execution delayed, said the Voidborn official. Technical difficulty with the human operator. Jisu felt the neural implant increase its control, forcing her finger to begin pressing the trigger. Her whole body shook with the effort of resistance. At that moment, Daeho spoke. His voice was quiet, meant only for her, but in the silence of the chamber, everyone heard it. You're free now, he said. 3 simple words, but they struck Jisu like lightning. The equation that had been floating in her mind suddenly connected to other memories. Her research, her discoveries, the moment before the Voidborn took her. It all came rushing back. The implant sent waves of agony through her skull, trying desperately to reassert control, but something was interfering with it. The air around Daeho had begun to shimmer slightly, like heat rising from hot ground. Tiny points of blue light appeared around him, floating like dust motes in sunlight. Execute him now. Emperor Zoth's voice had lost its calm authority. There was urgency in it now, perhaps even a trace of fear. Jisu's finger completed its motion. The trigger activated. The disintegration beam fired directly at Daeho's chest. Everything seemed to slow down. The beam of energy, normally invisible until it struck its target, was visible now as a line of white light connecting the weapon to Daeho's body. But instead of tearing him apart, the energy seemed to flow into him, absorbed like water into thirsty ground. The blue lights around Daeho multiplied, surrounding him in a cloud of soft radiance. His body began to change, becoming less solid, more like a drawing made of light. In their hidden ship, Taewon and his fighters watched the broadcast in stunned silence. "What's happening to him?" whispered Suk. Taewon shook his head, his eyes wide with wonder. "I don't know, but I think this is what he planned all along." In the Grand Void Chamber, confusion spread among the Voidborn. Their skin pulsed with rapid patterns of light as they communicated their alarm. Some backed away from the platform. Others moved closer, fascinated by the transformation taking place. Emperor Zoth stood from his throne, his massive form radiating anger. "What is this deception? Stop him!" But it was too late. Daeho's physical form had become entirely translucent, his body a shell of light containing something that was both more and less than human. He looked at Jisoo one last time, his eyes kind. And then the shell broke, and Daeho vanished. But he was not gone. The blue lights that had surrounded him expanded outward, filling the chamber like stars in a miniature galaxy. They moved with purpose, some flowing toward the human slaves, others spreading throughout the ship's systems. The ceremony of execution had become something else entirely, something no one, except perhaps Daeho himself, could have predicted. It had become a ceremony of transformation. Chaos filled the Grand Void Chamber. The Voidborn moved in confused patterns, their skin flashing with rapid communication. The blue lights that had once been Daeho floated through the air like tiny stars, some passing through solid objects, as if they weren't there. Jisoo stood frozen, the disintegration beam still extended. Inside her helmet, the neural implant sparked and hissed. Small wisps of smoke escaped from the seam where the device connected to her skull. The pain that had controlled her for 15 years suddenly stopped. With trembling hands, Jisoo removed her helmet. Her face was wet with tears. She hadn't realized she was crying. For the first time in 15 years, her mind was entirely her own. "What have you done?" she whispered to the lights around her. One of the blue points floated before, her eyes pulsing gently as if in response. Then more joined it, forming a pattern in the air, the same equation she had seen on the paper in her room. Emperor Zoth rose to his full height, his massive form towering over the other Voidborn. "Capture those energy forms," he commanded. "This is some human trick. They cannot escape the void." Voidborn soldiers activated energy nets trying to catch the blue lights, but their tools passed through the lights without effect. More concerning to the Voidborn, their technology began to malfunction. Communication devices stopped working. The artificial gravity fluctuated. The lights in the chamber dimmed and brightened in random patterns. Jisoo felt a strange sensation. In her mind, not the forced control of the implant, but something gentler. It was as if someone was opening doors in her memory, allowing her to access knowledge that had been locked away. Quantum equations, research notes, theories about the nature of consciousness and its relationship to quantum reality. All her work, from before her capture, came flooding back. "Of course," she said softly. "That's what the quantum monks discovered." In the confusion, no one noticed that the human slaves around the edges of the chamber had changed. Their vacant expressions were gone, replaced by awareness and wonder. Like Jisoo, they had been freed from their neural implants. One of the slaves, an old man with white hair, stepped forward. "It's happening," he said. Just as the old stories said it would. A human mind has transcended physical form. On their stolen ship, Taewon and his fighters watched the broadcast in amazement. The Voidborn transmission system was still working, showing everything that happened in the Grand Void Chamber. "Commander," said Suk, pointing at the screen. "Look at the humans in the background, they're awake." Taewon leaned forward, his eyes wide. The implants aren't controlling them anymore. Something has disrupted the Voidborn technology. "But what happened to Daeho?" asked Han. "Is he dead?" Taewon shook his head slowly. "No. I don't think death means the same thing to a quantum monk that it does to us." Back in the Grand Void Chamber, Jisoo stepped forward. The executioner's armor felt heavy and wrong now. She began removing pieces of it, letting them fall to the floor with loud clangs that echoed through the chamber. "Stop her," ordered Emperor Zoth. 2 void-born guards moved toward Jisoo, but before they reached her, a wall of blue lights formed between them. The guards hesitated, unwilling to touch the strange energy. Jisoo looked up at Emperor Zoth. Without the implant's control, she could see him clearly now. His massive size and the galaxies moving across his skin were meant to inspire awe and fear. But she felt neither. "I remember everything now," she said, her voice growing stronger. 15 years ago, I was researching quantum entanglement. I discovered that consciousness itself could become entangled with quantum particles. The Voidborn took me because they feared what that meant. Emperor Zoth's white eyes narrowed. "The human speaks nonsense. Consciousness is merely a function of physical brains. It cannot exist independently." Jisoo smiled. "That's what I used to think. But the quantum monks knew better. They discovered that human consciousness could exist beyond physical form, as pure information in the quantum field itself." As she spoke, the blue lights around her pulsed in patterns that seemed to confirm her words. "Humanity's greatest strength isn't technology or numbers," Jisoo continued, speaking now to all the humans in the chamber. "It's our understanding that everything, even consciousness, is connected at the quantum level. We are not just beings in the universe. We are the universe experiencing itself." The words were not entirely her own. They flowed through her mind like water, guided by the presence she now recognized as Daeho, not dead but transformed into something beyond physical form. In their ship, Taewon felt a chill run down his spine as he heard Jisoo's words. "That's what the quantum monks were studying all these years," he said. "Not weapons or defenses against the Voidborn, but a different kind of evolution entirely." Sook looked at him with wide eyes. "You mean humans can become like that? Pure energy?" "Not all of us," said Taewon. "Not yet." But Daeho opened the door. The Voidborn in the Grand Void Chamber were retreating from the blue lights, which had grown more numerous. They flowed through the ship's systems into its computers and power cores. Everywhere they went, Voidborn technology began to change. Emperor Zoth's voice boomed through the chamber, but now it contained unmistakable fear. "This is impossible. Consciousness cannot exist without a physical form. It is a basic law of reality." "A law you understood," said Jisoo. "But not the whole truth. There is more to reality than the physical." She turned to the freed human slaves. "The quantum monks discovered that consciousness is information, and information cannot be truly destroyed, it can only change form. Daeho didn't come here to die. He came here to evolve and to show us that we can too." One of the blue lights expanded before her, growing until it formed a rough human shape made of blue energy. It wasn't exactly Daeho's face, but there was something recognizable in it. A hint of his kind eyes, the peaceful expression he always wore. "Jisoo," said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "You understand now?" "Yes," she said. "Your capture, the execution, it was all planned. You needed to be here, at the heart of the Voidborn fleet, to show both humans and Voidborn what's possible." The blue form pulsed in agreement. "The next step in human evolution isn't technological, it's existential. We don't need to build better weapons or ships to match the Voidborn. We need to transcend physical form entirely." Emperor Zoth rose from his throne, his massive form looming over the chamber. "This ends now," he said. He raised his hand, and energy gathered around it, darker than black, pulling light into itself. "If physical weapons cannot touch you, perhaps the void itself can." He fired a beam of darkness toward the blue form. The humans gasped in fear. But when the darkness touched the blue light, something unexpected happened. The two energies didn't fight. They danced around each other, intertwining like old friends reuniting. "You don't understand yet," said the voice of Daeho. "The void and the light are not enemies. They are two expressions of the same reality. Your people evolved to embrace the void. Humans are now evolving to embrace the light. But neither is complete without the other." The dark energy from Emperor Zoth's hand began to change, small points of light appearing within it like stars being born in deep space. For the first time in the history of the Voidborn Empire, Emperor Zoth was silent. In that silence, Jisoo heard the equations in her mind more clearly than ever. She understood what Daeho had become, and what it meant for all humanity. The war between humans and Voidborn can end, she said. Not with victory or defeat, but with transformation. We don't need to fight over planets and resources when consciousness itself can transcend physical limitations. The blue form that was Daeho pulsed in agreement. This is just the beginning, Jisoo. There is so much more to show you. Around the chamber, the freed humans watched in wonder. The Voidborn, for the first time since they had encountered humans, did not see enemies to conquer. They saw something new, something that challenged everything they believed about the nature of existence itself. The revelation had begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. 3 days had passed since the failed execution. The Voidborn flagship drifted in space, its engines silent, its weapons systems offline. Inside, a remarkable change was taking place. Jisoo walked through corridors that had once been forbidden to human slaves. Her neural implant had been removed, leaving a small scar at the base of her skull. Around her, other freed humans moved with new purpose. Some were former scientists like herself. Others were workers who'd been captured during the Voidborn expansion. All of them were awake now, free from the control that had claimed their minds for years. She entered the command center of the ship. Once, this room had been the exclusive domain of high-ranking Voidborn. Now, humans and Voidborn worked side by side, studying the blue lights that had spread throughout the ship's systems. The transformation has reached the engine core, said a Voidborn engineer, his skin pulsing with slower, more measured lights than Jisoo had ever seen before. The quantum field is stabilizing. Jisoo nodded. And the communication systems? Working again, but changed. We can now send messages instantly across any distance. No delay, no signal decay. This was one of the many miracles brought by Daeho's transformation. The quantum nature of his new existence had begun to merge with the ship's technology, improving it in ways the Voidborn had never imagined. In the center of the room stood a column of blue light, taller and brighter than the individual points that floated throughout the ship. This was where Daeho's consciousness seemed to be centered, though Jisoo knew that was not entirely accurate. He existed everywhere and nowhere, spread throughout the quantum field itself. Jisoo approached the column. The other Voidborn ships are requesting instructions, she said. They don't understand what's happening. The blue light pulsed and Daeho's voice filled the room. They will. One by one, they will understand. Change cannot be rushed. Some may resist, warned Jisoo. Not all Voidborn will accept this new reality. Nor will all humans, replied Daeho. Fear of change is universal, but change comes regardless. In another part of the ship, Commander Taewon met with Emperor Zoth. They sat across from each other in a neutral chamber designed to accommodate both human and Voidborn biology. Taewon breathed oxygen pumped in for him, while Zoth absorbed the vacuum on his side of a thin energy barrier. Your resistance fighters have shown surprising restraint, said Zoth. His voice was different now, less commanding, more thoughtful. I expected revenge for what we did to your worlds. Revenge would change nothing, said Taewon. Daeho showed us a different path. What the monk became. Zoth paused, the galaxies on his skin swirling slowly. My people have existed for millions of years. We evolved in the cold spaces between stars, learning to absorb energy directly from the void. We thought ourselves the most advanced species in the galaxy. And now? Asked Taewon. Now we see that evolution has many paths. You humans look fragile with your need for air and water and warmth. But your minds... Zoth made a gesture with his long fingers. Your minds found a way to transcend physical form entirely. Taewon nodded. Not all of us. Daeho spent decades preparing for his transformation. The quantum monks studied for generations to understand these principles. But the path is open now, said Zoth. For both our species, On the bridge of a resistance ship approaching the Voidborn flagship, Captain Myung could not believe the reports she was receiving. "They're saying the fighting has stopped," she told her crew. "That humans and Voidborn are working together on the flagship." "It must be a trick," said her second-in-command. "The Voidborn would never cooperate with us." "Commander Taewon's authentication codes are valid," said the communications officer. "He's requesting that we dock peacefully. He says Daeho has changed everything." Captain Myung had fought the Voidborn for 12 years. She had lost her family to their attacks, had seen worlds burned. Peace seemed impossible, yet Taiwan was one of their most trusted commanders. If he said it was safe, "Approach slowly," she ordered. "Keep weapons powered but not targeted. Let's see this miracle for ourselves." Back in the command center, Jisoo worked with a team of human and Voidborn scientists. Her quantum equations covered every available surface, written on screens projected into the air, flowing through the ship's computers. "The theory is sound," said a Voidborn scientist named Nex. "Consciousness as information as fundamental to reality as matter or energy. But the practical application—" "Watch," said Jisoo. She closed her eyes and concentrated. 15 years ago, her research had nearly reached this point before the Voidborn had captured her. Now, with Daeho's guidance, she understood the final steps. In her mind, she visualized the equation that had haunted her dreams. She felt her consciousness expand, touching the quantum field around her. For a moment, her perception shifted. She could see the energy flowing through the ship, through the people around her, through space itself. A small blue light appeared above her hand. Just one, much smaller than the points that had come from Daeho. But it was unmistakably the same phenomenon. The scientists gasped. The Voidborn's skin flashed with rapid patterns of surprise and wonder. "You see?" said Jisoo, opening her eyes. "The path is open to all of us, not just the monks. Daeho showed us the way, but we can all learn to follow." The column of blue light, that was Daeho, pulsed brighter. "This is only the beginning, Jisoo. The first step of many." A voice came over the ship's communication system. "Voidborn flagship, this is Captain Myung of the Human Resistance. We are approaching your position. Commander Taewon has requested peaceful docking. Please confirm." Jisoo looked at the Voidborn communications officer, who nodded. "This will be the 7th human ship to arrive peacefully," he said. "Word is spreading." Jisoo activated the communication link. "Captain Myung, this is Jisoo. We confirm peaceful docking. There is much to show you." As more ships arrived, both human and Voidborn, the news spread throughout the star systems. The war that had raged for decades was pausing, not through victory or defeat but through transformation. In the Grand Void Chamber, which had been redesigned as a place of learning rather than execution, Jisoo taught the first class of students, AI, mix of humans and Voidborn who wished to understand quantum consciousness. "The path is difficult," she told them. "It requires letting go of old ways of thinking. For humans, it means understanding that we are not limited to our bodies. For the Voidborn, it means accepting that consciousness can exist beyond your collective networks." A young human woman raised her hand. "Will we all become like Daeho? Will we all disappear?" Jisoo smiled. "Daeho didn't disappear. He transformed. And no, not everyone will choose that path. Some will remain in physical form. Others will explore the quantum realm. Some may find ways to exist in both states. The future has infinite possibilities now." A Voidborn student's skin pulsed with a pattern Jisoo had learned meant curiosity. "Our species evolved to survive in the void between stars," he said. "Will we lose that identity if we follow this new path?" "No," said Jisoo. "The Voidborn understanding of the void, of emptiness and darkness is valuable knowledge. Combined with the human understanding of light and energy, we create a more complete picture of reality. We need both perspectives." As she spoke, blue lights danced around the chamber, sometimes forming patterns that illustrated her words. Daeho was always present, always teaching in his way. In the ship's meditation garden, a new edition created for those studying quantum, Consciousness. Commander Taewan sat with Emperor Zoth. Between them floated a small sphere of swirling energy, half darkness and half light, perfectly balanced. The first treaty between our species, said Taiwan, not written on paper or stored in computers, but encoded in the quantum field itself. Unbreakable, agreed Zoth, because it exists beyond physical form, beyond time itself. There will be challenges, warned Taiwan. Not everyone will accept this new reality easily. No great change comes without resistance, said Zoth. But the path is clear now. For the first time, I see a future for both our species that does not end in destruction. Above them, the stars shone through the transparent ceiling. Among them, barely visible, were tiny points of blue light, quantum monks who had followed Daeho's path spreading throughout the galaxy, teaching others the way. The monk had bowed to his executioner, said, "You're free now," and vanished. But in vanishing, he had shown everyone the truth, that nothing truly vanishes. It only changes form. And in that change lay freedom for all.